Hey everyone, it's Nathan Rose here. I'm the author of the Chess Opening Names series of books, and in today's video we're taking a look at another game of mine, one which I played a couple of days ago, which is a nice illustration of a guilty pleasure of mine, which is punishing opponents who just will not resign. Now in other videos I've given it from the opposite point of view, where if you are losing the game, how you can keep fighting on instead of resigning and try and turn things around, try and generate some counterplay. But there's a fine line, isn't there? There's fighting on when there are still some chances, and then there's times where it's just a bit insulting to keep the game going. And this game is an example of that, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So we'll join the position after 19 moves. The computer here says that white, which is me, already has a winning advantage. In fact, it gives it as +5 for white, which is like having an extra rook if you translate that into material. Honestly, it didn't feel like that during the game. I mean, I think I'm better. I've got the rooks connected. I've got good coordination with my pieces. This dark squared bishop is cutting across the board and preventing black from castling. So black can't castle, but even though I have castled, my king isn't really looking too safe either. I mean, it's just a visual thing, isn't it? You look at this rook coming down on the a file and the queen's hovering around and this knight has just come into b6. There's probably nothing here for black, but it just looks a bit scary, doesn't it? Well, it's my move. And I played queen e2. This creates a fairly straightforward threat. I mean, depending on your level, of course. The threat is to go bishop b5 check, and that would be a discovered attack on black's queen. And of course, if black took the bishop, then the white queen would take black's queen. So that's the threat. And the computer actually recommends that black castle's queenside here, which just looks wrong, doesn't it? I mean, there are absolutely no pawns in front of that black king, so it looks suicidal, but it shows how bad black's position is if this is indeed black's best move. So he didn't do that. Yeah, in this position, instead he played the move which I thought he'd play, and probably the move that I would have played myself, which is knight c4. So that stops the bishop from giving the check on b5, and it also gets the knight closer in towards my king. So I took that knight. Now this reveals the threat against the black queen, so of course taking the bishop with the b pawn doesn't work because then black's queen drops. So really here he has to take with the queen, and it's very easy to just automatically recapture in a situation like this. I think this is one of the real keys to becoming a stronger player, is to take pauses even in the middle of combinations. I mean, I could take this queen, and after he takes back, I can claim an advantage because my rook is on an open file and my bishop is better developed. He's only got a knight, he doesn't have a bishop at all. But much stronger. If you take a second to look, is queen takes e5 check. The point is that actually black has only one way of preventing this from being checkmate. All the squares are covered. That bishop is covering some squares, the rook is covering some squares, of course it's check with the queen. So the only way that black can cover the checkmate is with queen e6, and of course just take the queen with the pawn. And it's here where your opponent should resign. I mean, this usually happens with kids more than anyone, doesn't it? Then I had a game in a tournament once where I was up by an entire rook with the queens off the board, absolutely no counterplay. I think it was down to 2 rooks versus 1 rook. It was that level of material left on the board, and some pawns. And at that moment, my opponent offered me a draw. I mean, I laughed at him, and I think rightfully so. I mean, the kid was 12 years old, but he's got to learn some manners, for goodness sake. Well, I guess it's their right to continue playing the game, but in situations like this, I like to make it painful. Um, so, what does black do now? Well, okay, he makes a threat on my queen, and here actually I have checkmate in one. But, like I say, I like to make it painful. I like to really punish people who don't resign when I'm up by an entire queen. I mean, if this was a serious game, which had a lot riding on it, then of course I'd just do the checkmate in one. Maybe you can see it. It's queen takes b5, that's checkmate. But this is an online game, and chess is a game after all, so you can have some fun with opponents who insist on playing on. So let's see how it continued. I gave this check first on f7, king takes, rook on the h file to f1 check, king to g6, queen f5 check. Notice that these are all checks. King h6, rook d6 check, knight f6, bishop d2 check, and unfortunately here my opponent resigned. I would have liked to have him keep playing on, but I think finally here he had had enough. There's actually an example in the first edition of Chess Opening Names, or the first volume I should say, of an elite level player doing the same thing. There was a guy named Siegbert Tarasch who was playing against his arch rival Aaron Nimzovich, and Tarasch had a checkmate that he could see, which was simple and fewer moves than the move that he actually played, because he just wanted to toy with his rival a little bit, and rather than finish him off straight away, decided to give him a defeat that he'd remember. Like a cat playing with a mouse, as I wrote in the book. So I don't recommend that you do that if there's a lot riding on the game. Of course, pride comes before the fall, but when you're up by an extra queen, you can have some fun, can't you? Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Well, probably not. I think I enjoyed that quite a lot. But I hope you can play around with your opponents who insist on playing the game out. And most importantly, if you do take that approach, I hope you can go on and win the game. Don't throw it away, because that would be embarrassing. This is Nathan Rose, and see you next time. Do subscribe for more videos.